appreciate you doing the podcast with us, Brian. Let's excellent. I'll sit down and have a chat about DataRobot. So we've worked together in the past, which has been really good. But for people that don't know, it's kind of about DataRobot. What is it you guys do on the market? What's the product?
Yeah, great question. So, I'll back up and say, I feel like the founders of the company have felt like AI is going to be one of the most transformative technologies or sort of shifts in the world in our lifetime. Something on the order of the revolution coming from electricity or something like that. And so when we think about what we do, it's very much positioned around how can we bring AI to businesses and people who've never worked with it before, especially because the number of people who are AI experts is growing, but it's not growing at all fast enough. And the appetite for working with AI and the impact that it can have for social good and for building actually a fantastic business is something we think is achievable for people who aren't AI experts using the right tools. So our goal is to build those kinds of tools, and that ends up being an end-to-end AI platform that goes into all kinds of businesses, from very small ones to very large ones, helping people use AI.
Great. So really, obviously, just looking to optimize the impact you guys think you can make on the market in general, yeah?
Yeah, I think that means that we're constantly trying to introduce new products and work on new initiatives, looking at gaps between the tools that are out there and then what we think people need to actually get the AI to deliver the value at the business. And so, that's actually made us really step back from thinking about this from a technological perspective. I think a lot of people think about AI and they're focusing on the algorithm and they're focusing on just the data science. But the delivery of the data science is hard. It's really hard. And there are a lot of people who will write you an algorithm and say, thank you very much. I did the fun part. I'd like to walk away. And they're 20 steps short of delivering value for a business. And so one of the things that's interesting is at DataRobot, a lot of the data scientists are doing core data science at a world-class level, but then they're also doing a lot of infrastructure level things that are related to the data science and require data science knowledge, but don't actually have that data science look and feel, to be honest, but they're necessary to get the value into the hands of the person who's supposed to be making a decision. So, one way to think about this is how can you make a better decision with AI being your co-pilot? You can sometimes see in the movies where there's this futuristic boardroom and there's an AI board member sitting there. And so all the board members are kind of giving their take, but then the AI board member says, the data says this. And in reality, the data and the prediction shouldn't be all of the decision, but it should maybe influence it. And then humans can bring the nuance and the context and the holistic view and all of that. So, DataRobot of the future is your AI board member, but also the person who's helping you make practical decisions around churn or staffing or fraud or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I suppose you'll never be able to take out the complete human element.
No.
I suppose,
and I think that's really silly. I think, trying to do that actually makes you move in the wrong direction, because I feel like not only are the technologies necessary to do that not in existence, and I don't think we'll be there for quite a while. But I also think that, if you take out the human element, then you really get into ethical problems that are being more and more talked about in society today. So, how can we really make this something that is mostly good or all good and minimize the drawbacks? And yeah, the human needs to be there. Also, it's just more fun thinking about being enabled by AI as opposed to being replaced.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Having it help you as opposed to just lean on it completely.
Yeah.
I will just sit back and let it take control is of interest to no one, I suppose, is it?
No. I have no interest in, just having a lifestyle where I'm following the things AI is doing in the
Data
news.
says turn
like,
left, yeah.
yeah, AI did this and AI did that, and we all sit at home and watch the action. That's no fun.
But obviously, great explanation of what you guys do. I'd like to know, obviously, your part in that. So, what's been your journey in DataRobot, sort of up to the point where basically we started speaking and you looked to sort of grow this team in Denmark?
Great question. So I started in our Boston office, and prior to DataRobot, I was a graduate student at MIT, and I was really feeling like the most exciting things happening in the world of AI were not happening at the large universities. I was seeing classmates going to Google, to Facebook, to other companies. At that time, there were other companies in like the deep mind sort of sector where they were doing research, but they weren't, yet necessarily part of one of those giants. And you sort of get the feeling that these collections of smart people were pushing the field forward faster than necessarily the universities themselves were. And another thing is, when the end goal of the AI that you're producing is either an open source tool or a research paper, the open source tool is very cool, but you're still like, it's this handoff of the baton in terms of your impact. You can make the world's best algorithm, and then you can put it out there, and then maybe you'll get an email later on that says, hey, we used it for this cool thing. Do you want to, meet us, or do you want to talk about it, or whatever? And if you do like a research paper or something similar can happen. But when you're doing it at a company that has actually the means to push that into the market and has an end user, it's so much cooler. And I'm someone who, I guess for me, the human element of it, like knowing that someone's using something that I'm part of and getting some value from it, was much more meaningful. And I realized, spending another 5 years or 2 years or however long doing research here, without that kind of like user element was not what I wanted to do. So I started looking, and I was pretty sure that I needed to move to Silicon Valley. I needed to be in the Bay to do that. And I was looking with the help of a friend who had actually been a classmate of mine and a roommate of mine. And then he moved to WhatsApp right before they were bought by Facebook. And, he was doing great in the Bay and was very successful. And so I thought, like, I need to go out there. So he was helping me look. And then this company in Boston got on my radar, and I just dismissed it. It's like, I need to go to the Bay, need to do that. But eventually they just kept contacting me, and they were super persistent. And I thought, why not? Let's go there. And I was able to just like, take the metro downtown from MIT. And when I met them, they were at that point, I think when I interviewed, maybe like a 25 person company, and when I joined, 30. And they were working on practical AI. They were building something that an end user, without expert experience, without the things I had been learning to do in my education, could actually apply all the same things. And I spoke with the CEO, Jeremy, and he gave me a demo of the product. And I thought, I could do my entire thesis over again in like 2 weeks with this thing. And that was amazing. And I thought, what am I doing this? Obviously there's many ways of doing things that are sort of specialty data science and whatnot. But the way that they were building this, the fundamental approach was that this could be plug and play in so many different applications, because it was not vertical focused. They weren't trying to solve just retail or trying to solve just fraud or just churn. So that appealed to me also from my academic background. Like, okay, I'm going to be working, not quite on the algorithmic layer, but let's sort of step back and still make generic building blocks that can maximize the impact. And so I joined. I had a terrible first week at the company.
What happened?
It was a blizzard in Boston. We had consecutive days where there are massive amounts of snow, and then some of the snow started to melt, and somehow like that affected the apartment I was renting. It was like a student apartment, so it was not the best place maybe, and there was massive like water damage. And I remember it was like my second day, and I had a good first day, but you don't do anything on your first day. So you get your laptop, and then you sign into the email systems and whatever, and you get lunch, and then you're doing more like onboarding, you read the employee handbook, whatever. And then on my second day, it's like, I really need to go home. I just got a text, and like, there's water everywhere in the apartment right now. And so I left. And then I basically took the equivalent of a holiday on the Wednesday as well. And then I think I took 3/4 of a day on Thursday. And I was in on Friday, and I was just like, it's a 30-person company. Everyone sits in like more or less one room. Like, it's completely obvious. Brian's the new hire. He's taken 3 days off in his first week because of damage in his apartment. Don't expect him to hang around here long or whatever. So that was like a funny experience, and I was able to recover from that. Working on first the kind of core application, and then moving to the data science team, then leading a section of the data science team for a while, and then moving on to go do more customer facing work and more kind of data oriented work, like everything that happens before the model. So data discovery and ingest, thinking about data preparation, thinking about feature engineering, and that's kind of been my focus for the past, I would say, 2 years of my 5 years at DataRobot.
So that was the first start bit, because then I understand, obviously, then from that point, from Boston, you come over to Denmark for a while.
Yeah.
And it was over here in kind of like a representative role, speaking to companies. So how did that come by, that move from Boston to Copenhagen? Because it's not a normal jump over.
Yeah, definitely. So there were a couple of events that lined up to make that sort of move happen. First, we had gotten some more funding, and we started to set our sights outside the US to try to scale. I'm a big fan of Reid Hoffman's book Blitzscaling, which came out later, but we sort of had the idea before where we had to scale and then create a category around being this end-to-end AI platform and be the first to do that, and then be the first to scale internationally. So that was going on. And then at the same time, I had gotten married in Boston, and my wife had just finished her PhD at Harvard. And we said, maybe we should buy a house. And for me, like, I love Boston, but I'm a New Yorker. And I thought, okay, I would much rather buy a house in New York than in Boston. And I'm going to alienate a lot of DataRobot folks, who are going to watch this, who love the city of Boston. But I felt like, man, I don't want to sign a 30-year mortgage in Boston. That's something about that. I know people move all the time, and 30 years doesn't mean 30 years, but there was something symbolic about it. And I spoke with our CEO, who's really, really great at both the vision and execution sides of his job as CEO, but then he's also like a really caring, empathetic, and effective people leader. And I sort of said, like, in about a year's time, I think a move to Europe would be something that I would be interested in. What can I do to make this work? My wife is Danish, and coinciding with the expansion internationally, we said, how can we make this work? And I said, I will offboard any responsibilities that I have now and train people to take those on. I will onboard into any part of the company that sort of can make this work with me working from Copenhagen. And so I said, I'll do support, or I'll do customer facing data science, or whatever. So we worked something out and came up with a 1-year timeline. And so for 1 year, I was doing the things that I was doing previously, but training other people and then learning some new things. Started getting engaged with more of the customer-facing side in Europe, and then made that move. And that's like 2.5 years ago now.
Wow. So obviously you've passed on the baton, I suppose. You said of your roles before, started over here now. So when you come over here, it's interesting for the market. You've come over from Boston in America, historically for that time, maybe a bit more further forward with AI, and you've joined brand new into Denmark. What was your initial thoughts when you joined Denmark then 2.5 years ago on how this product could be implemented? What was your initial thoughts?
It was interesting because, I was working from home. We found a little place, and then I was working there, and I was going out doing way more biking than I had ever before to prospects, clients that we had in the region. I began to take on a little bit more of like an AI evangelist type of role. So doing far more like speaking, events, marketing, etc. So my impressions there were, certainly it was kind of a emerging market, or more so compared with like Boston and the US as a whole. More people here, with a hunger for learning more about AI, but not necessarily having seen like an effective implementation of it. Whereas I felt like when it came to clients in the US, there were a few more sort of touchstones, maybe because of the Silicon Valley tech industry, where people knew a little bit more about how AI could be applied and the potential of their data, and businesses were slightly farther along. So, being here, it was, okay, this is really sort of like an untapped market for this. And there are, analytics tools kind of out there, but ours is very different and very differentiated. So, in that period of time, initially, my thoughts were, first of all, what a great country to live in.
Yeah.
And that was fantastic. And as I began doing more of the evangelist sort of role, I was meeting a lot of engineers, meeting a lot of data scientists. And when I was digging in, they had, a lot of potential. And, I saw some sort of article early on that hit me. It was something about like top tech employers, and the number of tech employers that are actually tech companies in Copenhagen just floored me. It was really small. There's like Microsoft, very big R&D center here in Copenhagen, and there's some other high profile companies. But if you look at like any list of top 50, most of the places in the top 50 are not actually tech companies. Tech is a real side gig. It's it's banks, and it's telco, and it's all these other wonderful industries. But if you're a software developer, there's something special about working at a software company. And if you're a data scientist or a data science developer, there's something special about working at a company where the core product is what you do. It's the data science. And from that perspective, I sort of got to see there's talented people with interest here. There is a market for this that's kind of untapped, and the companies that are here aren't quite hitting the nail, right on the head in terms of addressing it, and that there's potential here.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting point you touched on there with like not being or being a data scientist and looking for somewhere that is directly involved and is a data science like house is concentrated on it for their product. Because on my end, of people I speak to, one of the biggest concerns that people have is when they say, I don't feel like I'm being like completely utilised, like I'm not being optimised. And maybe it's like an older industry that's adopted it and invested money in a team without a shadow of a doubt. But unless you have the mindset of what data science can do and how you can really make the most of it, you will always see any data scientist is always looking out for the new thing and what's changed on the market. It's a passion, isn't it? I realised that 2 weeks into doing this market a couple of years ago now. It is an absolute passion. if you have someone, and I think when we work together, and part of the success that we've had is where you guys have that concentration, whether we're doing actual physical data science or not, and obviously where you come in the process, the fact that it's it is the main part of who you are, and it's the main part that builds it up. I think the right people feel that passion, and that's what makes it so interesting. And that stands for other companies fall in that category. I've seen that develop, and I'd probably say you'd seen it as well, that the more that grows, the more these people are starting to see that this is the kind of place to go, and going somewhere that just adds it on. Although they might get paid slightly more, finance industry being a prime example, it only goes so far.
Yeah.
And if it's your passion as opposed to just your career, finding somewhere like that, DataRobot or a similar company, makes such a big difference.
Totally.
Makes such a big difference. So obviously that was part of what you were, I suppose, looking for in the people you were looking for as well.
Yeah.
What other goals? Because this is, I think, the interesting part of when we started talking as well, is that you've done all these really interesting stuff, and you've done mixed roles throughout DataRobot, and now you're left in a situation where I think the first few conversations we had were from your kitchen over the phone. So we're in an area of your house, and you've now gone to having a good-sized team, about maybe 15, 20 people maybe in the office now. When you started, what was your goals in that? Because that's an exceptional growth over, 18 months maybe less?
Yeah, I spoke with our CEO Jeremy about, doing more expansion here, and the not only the overall potential for us to hire exceptional engineers, but also the ability to find people who I think we're gonna really want to build DataRobot for the long run, which we want to kind of over-index on. I think we have a really large percentage of people who are saying DataRobot's a phenomenal, iconic company, and I believe in this. And as you said, it's a passion, and folks want to, challenge themselves and really build something that they're proud of and they look back on in their career. And when looking at the tech scene here and also looking at the quality of the talent, I thought this was a real opportunity. And so I said that to him, and I think our goals starting out were to hire truly world-class people, filter out folks who we think were sort of in it for, say, the wrong reasons, people who were in it for personal glory, or people who were in it for, say, just using cool technologies. Like I said, there's that huge value chain that goes all the way down to the customer. So sometimes the right decision for actually creating the most ROI for a customer who knows nothing about data science and is using this for the first time is not necessarily to use the hippest, hottest technology out there. So I think in that, it was really great to work together with you and your team, where we were looking for really great, but also honestly, really empathetic, really nice people. Because another thing is, when you have, 20 people in an office, everybody in your family. So I think our goals from the outset were here. I think that, our ability to find people who say, there's no other company in this market that matches my goals, where I want to go with my career and what I like to do day to day, in terms of turning my passion, my hobby for data science into what I do for a living, than DataRobot in Copenhagen. And in doing that, can we find people who we would just be, falling down over to hire in any other market, and do that here? So I think those were kind of our goals. Our goals were always to hire, people at a standard that matched what we had in Boston with our core office, and in Kyiv with our other sort of headquarters there, but take advantage of the fact that we could build something small, which is close knit, which gives that ability to say, here I'm working with a small team, these people have my back, and let's go build some amazing tech.
Yeah, no, I felt that in our process as well. And around the fact we discussed it extensively through that requirement. And one of the things I noticed compared to other companies, that your screening process is fairly long. So I wouldn't say
Yeah.
unnecessarily long, but it's long in comparison to some other businesses.
Yeah.
And on my front at the start, I was apprehensive, thinking, we may lose out on some people that want to go there. But I think what I've realised is it has bred the right kind of people that do stick it out. I say stick it out, it's not so long, it's a bit troublesome.
No,
but
there's something to that, yeah.
at some point they go, do you know what? Now they're here, they're match, obviously technically screened vigorously so they know they're right, but they've proven themselves almost in their personality traits as well. Was that? Do you know if that was something that was thought from the start, like we want this because of that reason, or has that just been an outcome of a process for other reasons?
No, I think, as I was saying, like, people stay with DataRobot and we have extremely high retention. And I think that's both because of the leadership that we have and, just unusual ability to both set a vision that's inspiring and then also take care of people over time as people's interests and family situations and goals for growth change. And then in addition, I think just that's the process we've had from the very beginning, and it breeds persistence. Just having, if you can stick it out through like a long and arduous selection process, I think, the people, as you said, who collect on the other side are going to be really special. Maybe you could say that just like special forces units have the hardest selection, but selection is just kind of like a rite of passage. Yeah, we have a lot of interviews. We have a complex interview process, but we find that it's worked for us. And what was interesting was coming from Boston over here, it was just worlds different from what you said other companies were doing. And I really appreciated that you gave me some market context, because I had never worked in a company here in Copenhagen before. I came with DataRobot, and so I appreciated that, and that helped me actually set expectations for people early on. So I moved to say I'm going to give everybody extra phone calls in the beginning of the process, more than I thought I would be doing. I was saying, hello to everyone, welcome, tours of the office, etc. early on, because we're a small team, and that's the sort of family-oriented nature that we have. But the extra calls were to set expectations. This will be a longer interview process than you're used to, and that doesn't mean that it's going badly, and it doesn't mean that you should give up. I think the advantage of it is, if you're active in the interview process and you're asking questions, you might have the chance to talk to 7-8 people in the company who are all, able to give you a real perspective, and you get to triangulate, on what is the real deal when it comes to working at DataRobot. And, if someone just gives you a position after, 1 or 2 difficult technical screens, I'm not sure you got enough info about the day-to-day and the lifestyle of the people who live, that company's ethos every day and their values. And in the end, actually, that matters more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I like we said, the funny thing is that every single person that I come through myself that you've successfully hired and started and worked here, firstly, it seems like they're all doing really well, which is really fantastic. Yeah. But not a single one of them ever mentioned anything about the length of the process and really enjoyed having those communications. And what I realised was, although there was a few stages to it, they all felt necessary. So I would say that it's on really writing down on paper, when you say it at the start, there can be that apprehension. Thankfully, after we'd done it for a while, I could explain it and let them know, and obviously you'll do the same. And then once you're in it, I got the thought that, that made sense to talk to that department. It made sense to talk to that right person. And people always come away quite energised from having it and well informed. So I think that was a really good aspect. And it's actually something that I've mentioned to actually other companies on how they might have to look into it. That although it needs to be necessary at all stages, just having it as short as humanly possible isn't always the best answer as well. So I don't know if that's what you were
Don't
aiming
share all
for.
the secret sauce.
Well, I keep a little bit close to my chest, but it's always worth knowing those little bits because it's obviously bred quite a lot of success. So definitely, look, you've had that part and you've gone through these highs, fantastically great. What I would like to know is, although it's a stranger situation for DataRobot, because obviously you had the big business elsewhere and the funding that other small companies wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Essentially, when you're out here, regarding how it's built, you're a one-man team. You're a small business, aren't you?
Yeah.
Doing it from there. So what was the biggest fear that you had? Because you must have been thinking, oh my God, how much is this going to scale up?
I'm not sure I had like specific fears. I remember after speaking with our CEO and getting the final go-ahead to start building the office here. I remember, it was on a video call at night, and I just closed the laptop, and I had, just that feeling that happens when you step and you try something new. And yeah, I can't say that I had specific fears. I think I had just general fear about like what if it doesn't work out, and could this be like a huge waste of resources for the company, a lot of energy? What if just cultural differences, especially attitudes towards work, don't match kind of that American startup mindset?
That's a big one. I think that's a
what
big
about
one.
Just simple things like my ability to explain a benefits package to someone sitting in Denmark when I could barely understand benefits packages myself coming to Denmark, because the process is very different. Everything from vacation to healthcare to pension to you name it. So obviously I was scared of doing some things wrong. Also just scared of, what if I do everything right and then, just there's some existential reason why other tech and analytics companies, besides Microsoft, haven't been able to succeed here. And that's, I'm pushing up against, barriers that I don't understand or don't know are there, and I'm going to fail anyway. I don't think there were specific fears there. I think there were general ones, but they were very real. Like I remember that
you would have for starting. I suppose even in that aspect, that's the interesting part to it. Because if you're just a small company starting in Denmark, you do have all those fears, and they may be without the safety net that you would come from having a bigger business.
Yeah.
But flip reverse on that is, if you're creating a company from scratch, those things you mentioned about like culture and all those changes in the packages, that can just be so fluid and adapted, because it is what it becomes.
Exactly.
As opposed to you having to change motivation, because we'd had conversations around that kind of thing. I mean, holiday is a big one between like the States and obviously in Copenhagen. I imagine some people fell off their chair in HR when he showed them the kind of national holidays, but that's just the cultural change that you guys had to go against. So different areas supposed to.
Definitely. I mean, I think in terms of bringing on people here, you're exactly right. Like, if you're starting something independent, then the culture is what it becomes. And obviously you hope that it's good and it's a benevolent culture where it has a good effect on your customers and people enjoy being there, and it's a good environment. I think, as you said, being part of a bigger business, there's an expectation that we have a global culture that is consistent across the company. And so, there was sort of that anxiety, like, what if we aren't able to build the DataRobot that I know from headquarters, from the room with 30 people, here in Copenhagen. And, with your help and with time, and I think with the long process where I think we were very upfront about the kind of dreams that we have of building a company that, does something special in the analytics space, and what that might entail. I think we're able to find people who self-selected in to do the kinds of, you know, interesting work that we have available. So, you know, at that point it was actually, you know, a smoother process than maybe it could have been. You know, like I said, in terms of using sexy technologies, you know, that's one thing that, you know, if you were to ask folks in our Boston office, is that something that we highlight at DataRobot? The answer is absolutely not. And so it was like, okay, how do I not fall into the trap of hiring, you know, some talented folks who want to, you know, chase shiny things?
Yeah.
You know, I had done hiring for our data science team and other teams before, the data team, you know, that I was part of, but hadn't done it, you know, as independently as I would have to do it here, you know, as sort of a one-man band. And there's also just like practical things, like someone, you know, early on would say, oh, where's the office? And, you know, my response is like, we don't have one yet. And it's like, you don't have one yet? Like, you're going to get one? Like, am I going to apply to work at a company that doesn't have an office? And I'm like, we'll get one. Don't worry about it. And it's like, I just met you. You know, I don't have, you know, good grounds to trust this guy who's calling me from his kitchen.
Yeah,
you know.
I had the same issues talking to people, and I would tell them about you guys and then have to say the same thing. So, oh, great, I'd love to meet them. Like, where are they based? Which is a big thing for Copenhagen as well, because of wanting to cycle. Well, we haven't got anywhere yet, but they're looking at these places. And people are like, well, I promise you, though, there's one coming soon. So I feel like it was maybe a bit more believed when you told them that one was coming soon. There's probably parts thinking, oh yeah, there's another recruiter telling me there's going to come work for one guy. He's talked into helping him. So I'm pleased it did come round. There was a lot of relief when you did actually get the office in place, because I think that made a big difference. Yeah. But like, there's only one aspect to all the areas. What I would like to know in that, now that I'll probably imagine you would feel like you're well and truly set now and those foundations are built to grow from, what would you do differently building up? Because I think there's a lot of companies, whether they be new or whether they just be in Copenhagen or want to move to Copenhagen, what would you do differently to make it better?
Very good question. I think, you know, one thing that I might have done a little bit differently, we didn't do a whole lot of, say, like meetups, and that would have been an interesting channel to do more of from like a growth perspective. But then again, I don't want to over-index on meetups because of the shiny thing, you know, sort of theme there. And there's a balance there. I think meetups are very good. I think that, you know, it's finding the right people, you know, at meetups. And also, you know, meetups can be a kind of weird stage to come up and say like, hey, I'm starting an office here, like, you know, come join us, you know, this is a hiring pitch, and not wanting our very first introduction in the market to be a hiring pitch. Yeah. You know, I think when you're entering a community like that, you want to offer value before you ask for something. And so there were some reasons why we didn't do that, but maybe we should have explored that more. Tried to offer some value by bringing in external speakers, and, you know, tried to present kind of the perspective that we have. And now we're more equipped to do that, but that's one of the things that maybe would have been good to do differently.
Definitely. I mean, it's funny you say, because that's something that we do and we do on behalf. So I've seen the benefits of like things like meetups and having those, even coffees, even though we're like heads of, and C-suite people sit down and have a coffee between 6 people, like a small intermediate one. We've had all those as well. So I've seen the challenges you mentioned as well, because there will always be a mixed bag, and there should be. At something like a meetup, you don't just want one type of person to turn up. So there should be that mixed bag. And there's also that line of where you don't want to just feel like, I'm putting this on for my own agenda, for my own reasons. Totally. Please come, and the application part's over there. Listen to how wonderful we are for hours and hours.
Yeah, take my business card.
Yeah,
it's just like,
no one wants that. No one wants
people
that.
People can feel it, you know.
Yeah.
They can sense it. So, yeah, you know, I think we decided to stay out of that, but but maybe we should have done a little bit more.
Yeah. I think they're great, and how you approach them, I completely agree. Is from what ones I've seen and ones that we've hosted, I do think they get to that point now where people have got the right point in it, and doing it could have been really beneficial for you guys. But
yeah, I think we'll definitely do more of that in the future. I think just early on, in terms of getting the word out, we did a whole bunch of a really great LinkedIn activity, obviously.
Yep.
Postings in all the normal places, and did it from a very, we're recruiting now point of view, sort of the hard sell rather than the soft sell, like, oh, I heard about this company at a meetup. I wonder if they have any positions open. Whereas we led with, we're hiring, are you interested in something like this?
Okay, so I suppose that's kind of where you are now, and like we said, the foundations are built, and we've got past that initial aspect, which I always thought was quite funny when we were talking at the start and what was going to grow. I mean, there was even people in my office when we started working like, do we even know if this is going to happen? And obviously it did. So now you obviously must be at the point now where it's very exciting, and there's plans now to grow out from here. So what are the plans now? So like your DataRobot as a company, but more specifically you guys here in this Copenhagen team, what are the plans?
In terms of headcount, I'm going to be kind of coy on headcount.
I don't mean necessarily headcount. It's fine on like headcount. More how you want to implement into the market, like what you want to do as a business.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that's interesting was we really overachieved, I think, selling DataRobot into the Danish market from the start. And I think, Denmark has an reputation for being an early adopter of technology. And both the government and businesses here have more data and higher quality data than most other countries can say they have. And so it is kind of a special environment. It's also full of very highly trained, educated folks who get it. When you say, AI on the street, people understand a little bit about what it is, and some people can even mention like a way that it could be used. As I said, though, there's less actual practical usage than there is, say, in the US or something like that. So, from that early on, like overachieving from like an opportunities and a sales standpoint where people were pretty hungry for it, at the same time, I think I was focusing a lot of my time on growing R&D because it was a special opportunity to bring in amazing engineers. So now I think kind of the growth plan is to actually bring the product a little bit more into the market. Not just, do R&D here, but to find and continue that overall like success we've had getting clients without a massive headcount or kind of ground operation. So we were getting clients without a ground operation. Now we're building out a ground operation.
Yeah, you can make it more local, something that's here, and because there was already a fair amount of success before that had started as well, wasn't there?
Yeah.
For you to be here, so now to have that in place to build from now, I think it must be definitely very exciting.
It is. It's very cool also because now we can show that we have a strong commitment to being here in Copenhagen and to the Danish market, and we can say we're building all these things, and then people might follow up and say, oh, but those people are consulting, or are they doing just special projects for clients here in Denmark? And I say no. Every single person in the office here is putting code directly into the core product, and I can go through the product and point to specific features that are being used in almost every account across the globe that are built by the team here, and that's amazing. So, I think not many, analytics companies can say that they're building analytics here in Copenhagen and then shipping it back to the US or around the world. And that means something also when you sell. When you're saying that, yes, we have a strong base here, we're not going anywhere. we can commit to how we're going to be able to support this product. And no, you're not going to be on the phone with someone somewhere else in the world, saying we're gonna support you during this small time window, whatever that is, 9 to 5 you. Boston time, in terms of being able to follow up with the product. I think it's also going to help us follow up on some of our partnerships, because feet on the ground let us actually work with our partners in a way that would be different if we had a few salespeople here and we said, we're going to sell some product and then ship the money, back to the global entity, and that's our relationship with Denmark. Denmark is not a treasure chest for us.
No,
it's absolutely a place where we have roots, and we have, family, we have employees, we have a network, and yeah, I think that makes a difference, and that's the kind of thing that I think we're going to continue to build and focus on with the growth plan.
Good. I mean, I personally, you're completely right when you said it was a good selling point on how you would sit with, or how the work is sitting in the business, as opposed to not just doing a small offshoot of DataRobot, and this is just like a little office out. This is direct impact on your core product that's then shipped out on a global scale as well. Because I think when you're right, when you speak to people and say that's what it is, there's normally a bit of, I didn't realise. I presumed that I would just be doing a little bit here, a little bit there. Maybe, well, because it's such a close community. In the time where you did spend here and you were speaking to companies, so if they don't do any more catch-up, it's probably in their head never changed.
Yeah.
And it's only over the last maybe few months when suddenly they're seeing, oh, he works at DataRobot, and he works at DataRobot. I heard DataRobot moved, and suddenly that word of mouth is spreading, and the roots you're talking about have now become a lot clearer.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic you guys did that, and to pick here to do it from, and have shown success in choosing to do it, which I think is the really, really great bit about it. Because I love Copenhagen, obviously understand the market and work in it as well. But it's not that often that I hear of companies and they're like, that's Copenhagen is the one we want to do it in. That's where we really see it going forward. And you've almost kind of gone against the trend for your own areas and then seen that actually it's most definitely a place where it's possible, and sort of become living proof that is the case.
Not just possible, but actually better. I think that, our ability to build a really great engineering team here is definitely enabled by the close-knit nature of the Danish market, and our ability to, stand by what we say and our values with the product, with the folks we're able to hire. I think if you look at some of the other markets across Europe, London being one, it's a very, this, much better than I do. It's a big, noisy market for data scientists. And that can be good, but then that can also, distract away from the product and the company you're trying to build, because folks are caught up in like the hype around the sector, and companies actually fail to really differentiate themselves in a world where they're, tech companies, and there's a bunch of tech companies, and people are moving between tech companies, and that's good. I'm glad that those places exist, but I also think that there's something special in not being in the Silicon Valleys of the world, in terms of that being our major focus. We have a wonderful office, and a lot of people that I work with in the Bay Area. We now have 3 offices in the Bay Area, actually: Redwood City, Santa Clara, and then downtown SF. Love all of those folks. But I do think that compared with a lot of other companies kind of that we'd be compared to, we have way, way fewer resources based in SF or New York or London or some of these markets. We have big presences there, but just percentage wise, I think we've chose to focus more in places that are not necessarily like the hyped hotspot, but actually, from that standpoint, I think we've turned that into like a major advantage for us.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, But I suppose because the amount of areas you have the Bostons, the San Franciscos, the Londons, and places that people know, and like I said, have that big hype and that buzz around that area and breeds those people. Second, you diversify it and go out into places that don't have that kind of reputation. You still have data scientists, you still have data engineers, you still have people that want to work with data, but now you end up with people that have maybe taken a different route, a different exposure, the whole product of your environment kind of situation where there's a different flavour and a different way of approaching work that you've now opened up, that a company that just says, oh, we're in Paris, we're in London, we're in New York, you've made it whole different way, haven't you? You've seen the other aspects to it. So that's what it felt like from you guys here. And especially the other bits you've gone into, like maybe like Kiev and that as well. Mm-hmm. So it's still fairly large, but still not like a world leader, I'd imagine, in data science in those areas. Yeah. But touched into it there as well. So it was that, again, was that something that you guys done for a business reason, or was it something you did for a data science reason? Did you realise that and say, let's mix this up a little bit? Or is it just happened through other points and other motivators?
Very, very early on, Jeremy and Tom, our co-founders, established strong relationships with folks over in Ukraine who helped us start the business there. So actually, there were folks within the first 30 people in the company working in Ukraine, which is very unusual. You often see folks going international in that way later on. But I think just, early on, Jeremy would tell me this, they're just amazing engineers in Ukraine. And we've got to work with them, and we've got to find a way to work with them as a global company. I think also when a company is that small, there can be a bias to saying, hey, we should have people in the room and let's hire locally. But, we had from almost the very start, it was, okay, we already have people in Singapore and in Ukraine. And from, my first day, it was, okay, this is just the normal. There's folks who are working around the world contributing to the same product. And we are okay with remote work. And we're going to do everything, no just chats in a room. We're going to put a video camera in here. We're going to have a call. We're going to record things. We're going to write down documents and assets and communicate well. I think the focus on actually recording things and written communication here surprises some people, because we've been kind of global from the very start. I think for Ukraine, as I said, from the very start, so building that from the ground up together with the Boston office as the two centers has been amazing for us, and we're all over Ukraine now. I think we have 6 offices in different parts of Ukraine. Wow.
That's good. Okay, I suppose that would actually give a good insight to how you're able to come to somewhere like Denmark and then as well, and bits we touched on earlier about the changing culture and expectations in general. If it's something you've done early anyway, it's just take the same formula, keep adding it as we go forward, because we know how it works, as opposed to a company that stayed so central, that grew so big centrally, and then looked for a way where they could do it. Yeah, it's always been in your DNA. It's not much of a change, is it?
It was completely in our DNA. It was not a change at all. In fact, I think there were a lot of folks who were like, oh yeah, why haven't we done Denmark, Copenhagen and Munich before? Why are we just doing this now? In terms of just the standpoint of someone sitting in Boston and a new time zone comes online, and we're only 1 hour off of Kiev, where we have so many talented folks, and it was just, okay, that's natural, that's easy. I don't even have to move stand up. We already have a stand up that caters to folks in Asia, and then we have another stand up that caters to folks in Europe, and another one for West Coast, and we record all of those and we share notes, and project teams move forward, and in terms of integrating folks in the company and the perspective of folks in other offices, with the Denmark office coming online, I don't think the change didn't even register. There was no culture adjustment. because our culture was, already international enabled, where I think, as you said, if you have a local focus and then someone comes online elsewhere, it's really toxic to have an environment where they feel like they're not in the loop, and that the systems of the company are not enabled for them to be as productive as they would be if they were sitting right here.
Definitely.
So all of our systems were built that way from the very start. There were no local systems, before, to break or change.
It had to be that way already. Yeah, again, it's a common thing that comes up that I would speak to companies about when you hear and they speak to this, or they work with this great company even, and it's well known and things, but the section's smaller, but where they don't have that communication in the Danish or wherever it may be, in anywhere else in Europe or wherever, now that they're removed, they're not just removed from like geographically to sit in the same office, they're removed regarding being in the loop and things like that. And you, from my exposure, you guys have always been really, really good at that. So what you said there would only back the things that I had seen. So look, on all that bit, so especially on you and DataRobot being here and all those bits, normally I think people would normally ask the question of, well, what's DataRobot going to do the next few years and what they're going to go down. What I want to know, you're the guy that's running this team here. You're the guy that's in charge of the Danish office. Regarding Denmark specifically, where do you want DataRobot to make a difference? So does that have to be somewhere that's maybe concentrated on, but something that you're passionate about and you think, I think our product would make such a difference there. I would love it to be there.
I think the Danish public sector is very special and super different from the U.S. public sector in a lot of important ways. Just a simple one is just the size of it relative to the GDP and headcount, number of people in the country. And so if you think about wanting to make an impact day to day in everyone's lives here in Denmark, there's actually like really good leverage that you can get by working with the public sector. If we work with, say, the healthcare system, or we work with SCAT, or some of these other parts of the government, we actually can touch every single Dane, and that's a powerful story. And I know that from, if I was looking at this from a pure economic standpoint or wanting to get the biggest accounts and revenue, like obviously private sector is big and successful in Denmark and could be a place to focus. But I think that I'm really excited about how we could help the Danish healthcare system sort of move into more of an AI-enabled era. I'm super excited about that. My wife's in the healthcare space, and we talk about it a ton, just over the dinner table, different things that, could be optimized, or things that they're collecting data on already that just need the right tools and the right people to work with to improve the system. Things that sort of are similar to that image I painted at the very beginning, kind of that AI board member. It's not just about diagnoses and things like that. Obviously, there's massive research and potential when there's someone, using AI to help diagnose. But there's also very practical things like supply chain, making sure that the right supplies are ordered and not too much, and that nothing is spoiling, that there's no over orders, things like that. Then there's staffing, making sure that you have the right people online at the right times and the right systems, that, we're not just doing this based on a spreadsheet or based on the way that we've always done it. And if you think about it that way, that's stuff that can improve the lives of patients and the level of service they receive. And it can also make it such that the folks who are giving the care have more leverage and are able to give like better care and are able to use more of their skills in a more effective manner. If you think about, say, a highly trained surgeon and that person and their entire quality team there, the nurses, the reception, all of the support staff, the operations folks, having them in the hospital working at a time when there's not demand actually means that they may not be there at a time when there is, right?
Yeah.
And those people want, they feel meaning from their work, and they want to have the biggest impact. And obviously we want patients to receive the best care. So I see all of that as a really special place to work, and something that is like uniquely, possible in Denmark.
It's a sector that comes up quite often, so I'm not surprised that you mentioned it, and I think it's it's very fitting in the sense of how you guys always spoke about it, how you would speak about DataRobot, and when we spoke about AI at the start, you mentioned about the human implication and how it can benefit and really improve the way we live. Looking to do something like healthcare is, without a shadow of doubt, you haven't got to say anything past that. You can completely see the kind of implications that it's going to have, isn't it? And the work you do with it in that sector is an obvious difference to the people of most in need. So, like for me and the bits that I speak to, and the people I speak with in the market, it's always going to be down that line of impact of the work I do. Data scientists, in general, very intelligent people normally, and throughout their lives have had multiple options on paths they could take, and the world would just have a ton more investment bankers if data scientists wanted to just make loads of money.
Yeah.
So it's I would say on 95% of the conversations I have with people, I have to mention salary and what they would want. If not a higher percentage, because once we have a genuine conversation and they understand I can speak to them on a business level, they've got no reason to bring that up, and they want to discuss the other points. So I'm completely with you. If regarding areas in which you think can make a difference, whether it be on the front of people that are willing to work here or what they want to do, the health sector, or just bits like that make a difference, is huge. Yeah. It's absolutely huge. And I suppose at the core of it, the whole reason you exist, isn't it, as a company of DataRobot or any AI business, and what they want to achieve. Yeah. So I think that's
definitely
incredibly cool part.
And don't get me wrong, like I think we do a fantastic job taking care of people, salary, benefits, work, and vacation time, all of that. I just think that you can have all of that taken care of, and you can want more. Yeah. Right. And it's that more part where you're like, not only are all those day-to-day, needs, and the human element of operating the business taken care of, but I want to come to work, and I'm working on the things that I'm passionate about, and that's the foremost reason. It's not, hey, I'm an investment banker and we're about to close a deal and I'd love to get that bonus at the end of the year. It's, you can have the bonus, and you can have salary, and you can have fantastic benefits, and that's the tech sector today, and that's amazing. But, can I make something that if someone asks me what I do, I smile and I say, I do this stuff. This is very cool.
Yeah, and that I think that's priceless, or if it does have a price on it, it's incredibly high. Yeah. when you can have that, and I feel that's the real implication that you get out of that section. So, I won't say I put a kind of thumbnail on it, within the area in which you guys work, because data science, as we've been saying, is a blanket term. Yeah, and it can touch on so many aspects. So, in the area in whichever you decide it counts as what you guys do, how do you think that's going to impact it? Because obviously you're fully into that market and helping and assisting regarding these areas of AI. So basically, why the DataRobot product as opposed to just going through and doing it maybe historically or without it?
Yeah, great question. I think that from the very beginning, we've done everything we can to, as I said, deliver the ROI and the value, and a lot of that has been, sort of the kind of thing that steered our roadmap into things that are much bigger than and much more diverse than just data science, where we feel like, what happens, for example, after you create a model. There are a lot of data science resources out there that stop there. They say, you have predictions, the model's accurate, celebrate. And that's just the beginning. If you talk to most businesses, I think something like 95% of machine learning models are never deployed.
Wow.
So DataRobot is the AI company that's focused on, making sure that the AI that you're building actually gets deployed. What are the steps that need to happen in terms of compliance? What about governance? What about the differences between data used for training and data that you use for the inference and prediction step? What does inference and prediction monitoring look like? Then when you have predictions, the prediction is not the business decision. And what we want is the business decision. So after we have that prediction, how do we actually create tools? We have a fantastic team that actually works on just that ROI, like tip of the spear kind of stuff, in reusable and SDK type components that customers can sort of take and make their own, to ensure that we don't just stop at the prediction and say, there's a 95% chance of this being the right answer. Then it's like, okay, how do you combine that with the human analysis that you did pre-data science to form a holistic view, because there's maybe things you're not collecting enough data on where humans have some experience, or they can, there will be situations where you want to temper the expectations of the model with the know-how that you have. That's why you employ people in your company.
Yeah.
They've got, just the way the business works is in their heads.
Yeah.
And so that's always been our focus. And I think in terms of, this space and different vendors out there, I think I would just challenge people to think about who's going to walk that road from we have a prediction to, hey, we made a business decision. There's a lot of language that we talk about when we define core purposes of our teams, about constantly improving how frictionless we can make our product. This is why we have like a big round start button in our product that kicks off models, and why we haven't focused on building like drag and drop style functionality like many AI platforms. The drag and drop means that you need to have the expertise necessary to craft the drag and drop pipeline. And often in data science teams, they're mixed, and there's a combination of people who are the leads, who know every aspect of doing that, and then folks who they're enabling or folks who they work with who aren't able to. And how do you leverage what's in these folks' heads to actually make the entire organization successful when using AI to have incredible ROI? Like, there are use cases that we're powering where a customer is getting 500 million ROI yearly from a single model deployed. Like, wow. That's how much leverage that they're getting from actually having the model deployed and implementing business decisions as part of an application that's consuming the predictions. So yeah, maybe a long-winded answer, but I think that there's a lot of great marketing out there. I think that in terms of products that walk the walk and say, hey, we're going to actually deliver value, like you can see this with the number of success people that we have. And we have more success people and more field people out there than any other company that does what we do. That's awesome. And that's something I can stand behind, that we mean what we say when we say, like, we're going to make you successful. And like a lot of our packages are around like enabling the business. How can we enable the business? We're the only company that does what we do or anything close to it that has a strong education arm. So we have this DataRobot University group in the company that was started from almost the very beginning, where we had folks who were training people not on how to use DataRobot as the core focus, but how to think about AI when applying it to a business. And now we have like 6, 7 different courses, and we hold them. There's one almost every day around the world.
Wow.
Um,
Big case of practicing what you preach, I suppose, then.
Yeah.
In doing that.
Yeah, and when people are even looking at DataRobot, we'll call them and say, "Hey, come take our classes." Like, this is not about us, brainwashing you about our product. This is about getting some context about how this can affect your business, and then let that stand on its own. And yeah, we have seen that just completely take off. And so I would highlight that again as key areas of evidence talking about how we're delivering ROI and how that's our focus. It's not, as I said, all about the coolest technology. We have a lot of cool technology. We have amazing neural net architecture searches, and we have all the bells and whistles you might expect. But anyone putting together some open source stuff can go market themselves as that these days.
Yeah. It's not about we have this shiny thing, it's going to make it good. It's we can use it to give you this great thing. It's a tool to build it, as opposed to look at this great tool that we have, because, like you said, it's on its own, it's useless.
Yeah.
Without anyone being there to use it correctly.
Or someone can push that up the hill and get it to work, but the impact that you're going to have when you bring in like a true partner that, if you think about just the folks who we have, the team that we have working with every account, like you'll have your own success manager. The success manager is looking at just the ROI. Like, think about that. So this is not the pre-sales or post-sales. This is not the AE. This is not the data scientist assigned to the account. This is someone who's actually like focused on what's ROI that we have here to make sure that we're actually doing what we say we're going to do in terms of that. And I think also our qualification process, if you think about the kinds of folks who we want to work with, we're very lucky that we make it our focus to work with folks who align with our values, and the fact that AI is, the long-term journey towards optimizing your business that we know it is. It's not a quick fix. It's not something you're gonna completely, tackle in 6 months or 9 months or a year. And folks looking for quick fixes, we try to educate them as much as possible using our education arm, even if we feel like now's not the right time for us to enter into a big relationship. And, we're mature enough to kind of say that and work with them and try to tell them, as much as we can from our experience in their industry, what we're seeing and what might be some good advice.
Great. No, I feel that as well from when I talk to people in the market, that is the case of how you're approaching it and all those aspects. So I'm pleased it's something that's clearly not just happened by accident. It's something that is that's core working towards. Look, I really appreciate the conversation, Brian, and obviously going through the bits, you guys, DataRobot and the growth and all those kind of areas. There's some great stuff, but yeah, I think there's too much more to add in it, except now for you guys to be at this stage we discussed of whether it may be, whether this is growing the product and you going out to businesses, or you looking to grow in general, and whatever that may be, whatever direction you guys are going from here, from what I've seen, I think is going to make a significant impact and really aligns perfectly for how I've seen the market grow data science wise. Now this is something where your tool can real optimize it. Now I would say from when you first started to now, that market is so ready for, it's getting to the point where it's really ready to make the most of like that DataRobot tool being implemented with it. So I think it could be great. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers, bro.
Yeah. Cheers.